This is a dangerous government making bad decisions on top of a global pandemic. But mind you, we shouldn't be surprised given the fact that they seem to have been pished half the time at parties in number 10. So
That's it, Mhairi Black. Don't mince your words. You just say it like it is. Put hello there and do hope you're all well. Now is this fantastic Mhairi Black speech really her best one so far? Well, I suppose that's up to for you to decide, my friends. So without further ado, let's get into it and enjoy.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Now, the charge that is often thrown at us on these benches is to stop talking about independence, talk about the things that really matter. And well, here we are, we've brought forward a debate on the cost of living and the cost of Brexit. And as far as I'm aware, there is only one Conservative MP wanting to talk, and not a single Labour backbencher wanting to talk about it.
They don't.
That is very interesting, isn't it? Very interesting. Wonder why. Especially on the Labour side. Interesting.
Now, the UK is in a sorry state just now. We have got one of the lowest pensions in Europe, one of the lowest sick pay, and we're getting increasing levels of poverty and inequality. And for the first time, this generation thinks that they will be worse off than the generation that came before them. Now, when I was first elected, I had said that food banks are not part of the welfare state. They are a symbol that the welfare state is failing. 8 years on, and food bank use is through the roof, and it doesn't show any sign of stopping. Vulnerable people who are forced to rely on the goodness of others to do something as basic as eat is barbaric. It was barbaric in 2015, and it's still barbaric now. Just yesterday, I actually seen an article where a woman was saying that if it wasn't for food banks, she would be a criminal because she would have to steal food. She would have to steal it. That's like something out of a Dickens novel. Now, the folk who normally occupy the benches opposite will tell you that all of this has nothing to do with 13 years of austerity. It has nothing to do with 13 years of Tory governments, nothing to do with 5 Tory Prime Ministers wreaking havoc on the country. But they say it's actually because of 2 reasons. Firstly, COVID, and the second reason being the war in Ukraine affecting energy prices. Now, there's an element of truth in that. Of course, these 2 seismic events... Are you wanting to intervene? On you go.
Have you saw the other video did the other day? This is the first of the ding-dongs between these 2. Hilarious.
I'm just interested, in terms of the element of it being part of a problem, we had to spend 400 billion to get us through the pandemic. How does the SNP, would they have spent more or less than that?
If he'd shown a bit of patience, they would see what I'm about to say. So just listen very well.
Tigger.
Why don't you just listen?
Sprightly.
Right, so give me 2 seconds. 2 seconds.
I'm sorry for jumping in, but I can't laughing. Chuckling at the Tigger jibe. Now that sounds like David Linden to me. Is it? Now, my Scottish subscribers will tell me straight, but that sounded like David Linden to me. Very funny.
So, first of all, let's look at COVID. This is for you over there. The government awarded... This is for the honourable member over there. The government awarded £10.5 billion worth of pandemic-related contracts to companies as part of no competitive process in a VIP lane. This is a lane that was dedicated to prioritising politically connected suppliers at the start of the pandemic. The New York Times have found that billions went to companies that had no prior medical experience. In fact, just down the corridor, well, I say down the corridor, no one's seen her in a long time, but we have Baroness Moan, who I think was last spotted on a yacht somewhere, so I think she's doing fine. But she appears to have made nearly £30 million profit from PPE after she helped a company secure a place in that VIP lane.
Stop the boat! Now that's one boat I definitely would want to stop.
A company which the UK government are now spending more than £10 million to sue after they discovered that the equipment was actually unusable. The government lost track of £4.5 billion of public money wasted through error and fraud during COVID and have no intention of finding the billions of pounds. Yeah. But when my constituent finds that he was overpaid tax credits in 1999, oh, this government are unstoppable. They will hound you down. They will hunt you for £450 before they go after £4.5 billion. Especially when a lot of it appears to have gone to your pals. This is a dangerous government making bad decisions on top of a global pandemic. But mind you, we shouldn't be surprised given the fact that they seem to have been pissed half the time at parties in number 10. So as I said, there is an element of truth in that the war in Ukraine, for instance, has also...
I should just say to the Honourable Lady, she really must not use language like that.
She's not happy, is she? That's it, Mhairi, just tell it like it is. Not impressed.
Please don't. And I hope you will apologise for...
They were inebriated, intoxicated, they were paralytic at parties in number 10. Is that all right?
Quite careful. Mhairi Black, continue.
I don't see what I said that wasn't true, Madam Deputy Speaker, but I take it. So, as I said, there is an element of truth to the fact that COVID has had a big impact. There is an element of truth to the fact that the war in Ukraine has also had a global impact on energy supplies. But what I would say is that unexpected events and conflicts will always occur, which is precisely why it is so important that we have governments that plan in advance, that think long term, to make decisions that will build our resilience in the face of the unforeseen. Now, the events in Ukraine actually only exacerbate the fact that the UK has not had a sensible energy policy for over 30 years. Now, Scotland has heard this song many times before. We've endured this kind of mismanagement for years. We're one of the only countries to discover oil and somehow get poorer. Whereas countries like Norway, which are comparable, they sought to treat oil as a national asset to be used in the national interest, and they invested it into a sovereign wealth fund worth over £1 trillion today. Similarly, in the 1980s, Denmark and the UK both had very similar scale renewables wind programmes. And Denmark chose to heavily invest in this sector, whereas the UK focused primarily on what's the cheapest and quickest option. If you fast forward to 2016, you will find that Denmark's wind exports were worth over €7 billion. The UK had wind exports of less than £500 million. It's like having bullseye. Here's what you could have won, and on that point, on you come.
She's speaking about energy policy. Does she agree with the SNP Green Government's policy on a presumption against new oil and gas fields in Scotland?
Against nuclear would be a good start.
Well, as someone has said behind me, for a start, I would say I'm totally against nuclear, which is where I'm about to answer the question, but that's exactly what this honourable member wants. In terms of what the Scottish Government are doing, I'm very proud of the coalition government and the fact that they are investing their money in places that make sense. They are investing towards a just transition. Now, you'll like this point. The UK, and the only sector in the UK that has actually made comparable profits to Denmark's wind sector is the arms industry at €7.2 billion. So there's a political decision for you. Our government would rather fund weapons that bring death and destruction than fund industries that might just help secure life on this planet in the future. Political choices matter, not just in facing the problems of the day, but to plan for a future worth living for. Again, this is dangerous governments making bad decisions. Now, lastly, no, I'm on my last point, thanks. I want to address the Brexit-shaped elephant in the room.
Sorry for putting that. When I first heard that, I thought Mhairi Black had reverted to builder's language there, but then I realised when she said what she said was Brexit-shaped elephant there. Oh, I thought she were in trouble again.
Brexit, which is shrinking our economy, limiting opportunity for our citizens and our young people, and it's emboldening the worst in us. Just across the sea, in small independent countries like Ireland, with a similar population to that of Scotland, has seen the highest growth in their economy in Europe as part of an EU with access to the single market. Whilst in contrast, Brexit Britain is one of the poorest performing economies and are closing ourselves off from the rest of the world. Now, this is a Brexit which we can't forget is supported by the Tory party and the Labour Party. This is a Brexit which has been thriving off of racist and bigoted dog whistles, a Brexit that has cost us economically, and arguably it's cost us more so morally. It's a Trojan horse decked out in Union Jacks in the hope that we don't notice our food standards, our health and safety, our workers' rights, even our human rights eroding underneath it. This is a government which can't afford to give £25 to the poorest in our society, but can afford to misplace £4.5 billion. This is a government that force women to prove that they've been raped before they can claim the benefits that they're entitled to. This government is one which tries to shame people, shame the sick, shame the disabled into work, and it completely ignoring the fact that most people in poverty are in work. Most of the children who are growing up in poverty live in households where their parents work. The government, well, it knows that the minimum wage isn't enough to live on, but instead of substantially raising it, this government's just decided, let's rebrand it and hope that nobody notices. Let's just call it a living wage, because surely nobody's paying that much attention. This is a government that will applaud our key workers, applaud our NHS, but draws the line at paying them fairly for all the work that they did. And in fact, they go further than that. They now want to restrict the rights to strike, the right to protest for that fairer pay. They will hand millions of pounds over to their pals and to their political chums. They will hand it via their WhatsApp groups and backroom deals, rather than raising standards in a country where living standards are sorely declining. So when I'm asked, why do you support independence? The answer is all of the above. I am tired of people in Scotland paying the price for disastrous decisions imposed by governments that have no mandate in Scotland. The Scottish Government spends millions each year mitigating Tory policies. We defend people as best we can. And it works to an extent. No one in Scotland has endured the bedroom tax, for instance. Child poverty rates in the UK are at their lowest in Scotland. Now that, of course, I'll give way.
Child poverty, because Bruce Adamson, who was the Young People's Commissioner, has turned around and said, when he was asked, is Miss Sturgeon raising the bar for all, closing the attainment gap or opening opportunity for every child? He said, no, she's failing, absolutely. How does she respond to that?
Now, for those who watch the previous video, know what's coming, don't you? Just enjoy the burn, my friends. Just enjoy the burn.
By saying, give us the powers to be able to...
Just done yourself at the red for that one.
Hold on, if you just listen. Child poverty rates, as I said, in the UK are at their lowest in Scotland, where the Scottish Government is making a concerted effort to build a well-being economy. I tell you what, Madam Deputy, if the Honourable Member wants to continue this back and forth, he should maybe have put in to speak in the debate. But I'll leave him to Google things on his phone for now. Now, the Scottish Government will always do what it can. But the truth is that one child growing up in poverty, left to deal with the scars of poverty, which do not heal for a long, long time and for a lot of people, is one too many. The Scottish Government has done and will continue to do all that it can. But so long as 70% of financial powers, it would benefit from listening to this, but 70% of financial powers and 85% of welfare powers are in the hands of him and his government. It is not within the gift of the Scottish Parliament to solve these problems. And in actual fact, I can think of one solution which would give Scotland the powers to act, and it begins with an I. But anyway, Whether it be the blatant profiteering during a global pandemic going unpunished, whether it's supermarkets keeping their prices high despite there no longer being a need for it, or if it's the eye-watering profits our private energy companies are currently enjoying, whilst while ordinary people can't afford to cook hot meals. It couldn't be clearer. This is not a cost of living crisis. This is a cost of greed crisis. There is plenty to go about. It's just that few are hoarding it, and this government is helping them. This is a crisis made by the choices of this place. This place is the one that has the power, nowhere else. This is a crisis, again, made by a dangerous government making bad decisions.
Well, what do you think of that then, guys? Well, I couldn't disagree with anything that Mhairi Black had to say. Enjoyed the bit where she toyed with our Dr. Luke Evans and then just ripped him a new one, didn't she? Now, I decided to put the full speech on Friday because, well, it's the weekend coming up soon and we all need a bit of a pick-me-up and a bit of a Tory rinsing, you know, before the weekend starts, don't we? So, I do hope you enjoyed the brilliant speech and tell me what your favourite bits and I shall bid you farewell and take care, my friends.